Now on Justice.
Well, we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens.
President Trump with more ominous words for North Korea. Are we on the brink of a military strike?
Maybe it's the calm before the storm.
Congressman Lee Zeldin plus my all-star panel here live to break down the president's cryptic messages. Plus,
it is a sign of the deep dysfunction of this government and this Republican Party.
Her desperate quest for relevance continues as Hillary calls the GOP and the NRA complicit in the death of 58 people in Las Vegas. It's my opening statement. Then, as the vice president pays his respects in Vegas, I get into the hypocrisy from Hillary and from Hollywood in the wake of the mass shooting with NRA spokesperson Dana Loesch. A busy night of news, and there's only one place to get it. Justice starts now. Breaking tonight, a note found in the hotel room of Las Vegas shooter Stephen Paddock sheds new light on the investigation. Plus, Hurricane Nate makes landfall near the Mississippi River. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight, and thanks for making Justice the #1 show on Saturday night once again last week. We're going to go live to Las Vegas in a moment with new details on the shooting investigation. Plus, my opening statement also straight ahead. But first, the Gulf Coast hunkers down as Hurricane Nate has made landfall near the Mississippi. We'll go live to Adam Klotz with the latest. Adam?
Hey there, Judge. Yeah, this is still a big storm, still happening with winds at 85 miles an hour. Made landfall, weakened it just a bit, actually running a landfall right outside the Mississippi River, so running into some of those little delta islands. It's going to eventually make a second landfall on the Mississippi coast here in the next little bit. It slowed down a bit, but still a fast mover, moving north at 20 miles an hour. Typically, you see a storm like this, maybe 10 to 12 miles an hour. So this has been fast moving. That's going to continue. Here's your satellite and radar. You see it spinning. This is our center of circulation. So you ran over a couple of those islands right there, but this is going to continue to lift back up over open water before eventually here overnight, closer to 11 or midnight, making landfall again across the Gulf Coast once again. You're still seeing some of these outer bands of rain, this very heavy rain and wind, now pushing on it from Mobile over towards New Orleans. This will stretch out farther to the east, eventually over towards Pensacola, Panama City. We're still very early in this event with some of the bigger storm activity still yet to come, but it's likely at this point going to stay a Category 1 storm as it eventually moves on across the Gulf of Mexico here. Here's our future forecast, and this is really going to break down what we expect here going forward. From 9-10 o'clock, there's your center of circulation. Where's it heading? Well, it's tracking there to the north and to the east, eventually likely midnight or so, making that second landfall. Still very heavy storm activity on the way for Mobile, stretching over to Pensacola. That coming in the next several hours. I'm going to run you here all the way until 8, 9, 10, 11 tomorrow. It's all the way until then, Judge, that you finally get on the backside of this and maybe the coast can dry off. And then you're talking about tropical force winds in Alabama and Atlanta for your Sunday. Judge.
Adam Klotz, thanks so much. And now, my opening statement. In the middle of insane carnage, bloodshed, and death, a cold, calculating politician decides to make her move. In the aftermath of the worst mass shooting in American history, as parents, friends, and families desperately search for loved ones, as blood is actually reflected in Las Vegas's rising sun, she decides to manipulate the pain, the anger, and direct it toward lawful gun owners. She tweets, "Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier." Hillary, there's a reason you lost the election. As Americans come together, you seek to divide, not sympathize, not empathize, showing just how hollow a tin man you are. In your desperate attempt to be relevant, you go after gun owners and the NRA, when this guy wasn't even a member of the NRA. And then you go after the opposing party.
Because I can't believe that one whole political party in the greatest country on earth is totally sold to the gun lobby.
But she's not done blaming everyone but the shooter.
Do you feel like they're complicit, the GOP, the NRA, in the gun epidemic we're seeing in America?
Of course they are. Of course they are.
Wait a minute. The NRA and the GOP? How dare you connect law-abiding citizens exercising our Second Amendment rights to a mass murderer of innocent civilians? How dare you call us complicit with a whack job misfit who is the epitome of evil? But then again, you and your liberal leftist anti-gun friends will use any excuse to disarm Americans. Just as we cannot blame all Muslims for the actions of a few, how about you not blame all gun owners for the actions of Paddock? You know, Hillary, you got to stop trying to be Joan of Arc. Your words ring hollow. And if I'm wrong, tell me the last time you were in Chicago where gun violence is so common that children on playgrounds don't even run at the sound of gunfire. Where is your indignity and your passion for African American victims of gun violence there every weekend? Don't Black Lives Matter? Yet you and your friends are so determined to disarm us. You, the same woman whose department used CIA operatives to traffic guns through Benghazi to Turkey and then Syria. You, whose pal Barack was fast and furiously sending automatic weapons across our border to the Mexican cartel for free, some of which were then used to kill us. You, the same woman whose State Department approved a deal from which you personally benefited that sold 25% of America's uranium to Russia with the potential to kill millions of us. And you want to point the finger of blame at law-abiding citizens and the GOP to pursue your pathetic agenda? Now, I'm not going to waste my time telling you that disarming legal gun owners will not put an end to gun violence. There's a little massacre in Chicago every weekend where guns are banned, where the only people who have guns are the criminals. And if that ain't backward thinking, I don't know what is. And you call us rednecks? Give it up, Hillary. Don't try to hold innocent people up to public disdain by saying that we are complicit with a mass murderer. You want to tell us what kind of gun we should have, how much ammunition is enough, whether we should even have guns at all. Here's our collective answer. It's not only no, it's hell no. And we don't need your permission or your sanctimonious condescension as to the reason one should or shouldn't have a gun. I own guns because it's my right. It's my Second Amendment right. No one in Washington gave me that right. It's a natural right confirmed by the very people who founded this nation. And I don't want to hear about your politically correct or your opportunistic nonsense. There's a time and place for everything. And it's time for you to go back into the woods. That's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. Hashtag Judge Jeanine. New details emerging tonight as investigators still try to determine why the gunman, Stephen Paddock, fired on that concert crowd in the deadliest mass shooting in United States history. Dan Springer is standing by in Vegas with the latest. Dan?
Yeah, Judge, it's frustrating for police, certainly for the public, but still no motive at this time. However, we are continuing to learn more about the extensive planning, and we've talked about that note that was found in the shooter's room. It was not a suicide note, had a lot of numbers on it. Now CBS is reporting that it was a mathematical calculation so the killer could murder as many people as possible. Stephen Paddock wrote down the distance down to the concert, the drop from the 32nd floor, and the speed of the rounds to figure out where he really had to aim to maximize the casualties. But 6 full days after the carnage, and police seem to have no idea what triggered Paddock. They've interviewed those closest to him, only a couple really, his girlfriend and brother in Florida, no help. They've looked at his finances, his electronics, his last movements, nothing. And now the FBI is asking for the public's help by putting up billboards around Las Vegas. Meantime, Vice President Mike Pence was here today helping the city and the entire country heal. He visited one of the several memorials and he made some remarks at City Hall after a prayer walk.
We find comfort in the knowledge that we are united as one nation, as one people, with one voice. United in our grief, united in our support for those who have suffered, and united in our resolve to end such evil in our time.
And a lawsuit is coming probably sooner than later. A lawyer representing some of the victims' relatives filed a petition yesterday asking the court to freeze all of Stephen Paddock's assets. It could be extensive. We know there was a report that he made $5 million gambling and on real estate a couple of years ago. His brother says he's a multimillionaire, so those assets could get frozen. Also named in the lawsuit, which has not been filed, but they're saying they're going to file against not only the shooter, but also MGM and the folks who ran that festival out here last week. Judge?
Dan Springer, thanks so much. And joining me now with a reaction to my opening statement and the renewed gun control debate in the wake of this devastating massacre, NRA National Spokesperson Dana Loesch. All right, good evening, Dana. You know, what do you say to people who say that gun control is going to keep Americans safe?
Well, that's an utter lie. And Judge, thank you so much for having me. And your opening statement, by the way, was 1,000% correct. And I think that what you said and those remarks reflect accurately what law-abiding gun owners across the country think. For those who think that further gun control is going to keep us safe, I challenge them to tell me how they plan to elicit cooperation from criminals, how they plan to get criminals to cooperate with the laws that already exist. You know, Judge, universal background checks failed in California. Further gun control failed in California multiple times. San Bernardino, the Isla Vista, Santa Barbara murderer as well. In fact, wherever gun control is implemented, that's where we see further loss of life. Whenever it is gun-free, that's where you see further loss of life. If anyone can come up with the idea, Judge, to say how they can get criminals to cooperate, I'm all for it. I'm all for hearing them. Let them make their case.
Well, you know what's interesting is, you know, we banned semi-automatic weapons for 10 years, and you know, even the Clinton Justice Department came out and said it had no impact on the number of crimes or the number of murders that occurred. I mean, how many studies does there have to be? What is the ultimate goal of these people when they say we got to have gun control, we got to stop the NRA? You know, as if the NRA, the GOP, I mean, we are enemies. People want to kill other innocent Americans. What is it all about?
That's a great question. And as for Hillary Clinton and her remarks, I'll remind Hillary Clinton that many of her voters are members of the NRA. And there were NRA members that were also in attendance at that concert in Las Vegas. In fact, there are many Democrats who are members of the NRA. And Hillary Clinton would do well to watch her words on this. Otherwise, she's going to cause her party to lose more voters to President Trump coming up in the next elections. But as far as what their ultimate goal is, you know, I have that question as well, because you noted so eloquently, Judge, when you were discussing Chicago, they don't seem to be concerned there. In fact, during the previous administration, Judge, they weren't concerned when felony prosecutions, prosecutions for felony gun crimes just dropped drastically. In fact, Chicago is at the bottom of the list. When you look at the cities with the highest crimes, they're at the bottom of the list for prosecutions of felony gun crimes. So where is their concern? It's inconsistent. Fast and Furious, you noted that as well. They didn't seem to mind that so much.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, they're not prosecuting these cases. The Obama Justice Department did not prosecute these cases to the extent that the rest of the country was prosecuting. I mean, this is not difficult stuff. I did it when I was DA. You get an undercover, you get involved in the gangs, you find out who's doing what, confidential informants, and you prosecute to the full extent of the law. They don't even do that in Chicago. When I called Cook County a couple years ago, they wouldn't even give us the numbers. But let's talk about Hollywood. You know, no one wants to go to Hollywood and the gratuitous violence in the movies and the fact that they're selling this in so many ways, and yet the first thing they want to do is they want to legislate legal possession of guns and ban guns on us. But let me be more specific. This bump stock, okay, it makes a rifle less accurate. We all agree on that. What impact will that have on crimes in America?
Well, none. This is the only crime that we're aware of in which bump stocks were, and we're not even sure, I want to caution, we're not even sure whether or not bump stocks were used in this particular crime, other than that there were 12 present in the hotel room. But as far as bump stocks, look, I know that this is something that Wayne LaPierre and Chris Cox have urged the ATF to be more consistent. You know, the ATF wasn't consistent where it concerned Fast and Furious. That was exploited by gun control advocates to actually call for more gun control, more gun regulation. Congress needs to listen to what American voters want. And when American voters went to the polls in November, Judge, you remember, they voted in favor. They wanted national reciprocity. They wanted the Hearing Protection Act. Congress, members of Congress need to actually listen to voters on that. The ATF needs to do their jobs. And I'll caution Americans, who has ever followed Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and Chris Murphy and ever come out on the winning side of anything? Those individuals should not be in charge of determining rights.
Well, not only that, but if you do follow them, Dana, I guarantee you there's someone with them who has a gun. You know, so it's their guns that and the people carrying them that are important to them. But we'll see what Congress does with this, Dana, and the Republicans who seem to be somewhat open to this bump stock banning, as though that would have made a difference. Quickly, would it have made a difference? You say we don't even know if it was used, right?
We don't even know what was used, and I wish that lawmakers, when they talk about studying homicides used with illegally possessed firearms, they would look at the number of lives saved, because it greatly outweighs lives lost.
All right, Dana Loesch, great to have you on tonight. And they're the worst of the Washington insiders holding up real change. I'm going to introduce you to them tonight. And next, what is the president planning in North Korea?
Well, you'll figure that out pretty soon.
Are cryptic tweets and one-line sound bites the precursor to a military strike? Republican Congressman Lee Zeldin live to discuss that and more. We're live with late-breaking news. Justice is coming right back. Breaking tonight, President Trump hinting at possible military action against North Korea in a cryptic tweet today. This while reports indicate that he will decertify the Iran nuke deal next week. Here with reaction to all this breaking news, New York Congressman Lee Zeldin, a member of House Foreign Affairs Committee. All right, Lee, before we get into Iran and North Korea, just very quickly on this bump stock thing, you heard Dana Loesch from the NRA saying there's no evidence that the Paddock even used the bump stock. What do you think the climate is in Congress, in the Republican Congress, as it relates to, you know, banning the bump stock that Obama let through?
I think the best thing would be for the ATF to revisit some of their earlier guidance on this. In past years, they've
What does that mean, revisit?
Well, you can effectively turn a semi-automatic into a fully automatic weapon. And there are different rules that would have had this particular shooter wouldn't have had that capability. And but you know, it's a slippery slope when you start legislating, if necessary, because then it starts with a ban on bump stocks, and then you start adding all. Nancy Pelosi said she hopes it becomes a slippery slope for more gun control.
Because she wants to take the guns away. But no, but I'm not sure I get it. So you're saying if we let the ATF look at it again, they're going to change their minds and say we don't want it?
I think they should.
All right, but if they don't, what are the Republicans going to do?
Well, then you might end up having a legislative push that you can start off with a narrow push on bump stocks, as long as it doesn't become a slippery slope. We can have a debate on that.
How many murders have we had in this country? Bump stocks.
You know, possibly this.
Have you ever heard the word before?
There are a whole lot of A-rated NRA members who serve in Congress and out of Congress who are learning about bump stocks after what happened in
Cornyn
Las
said he
Vegas.
never heard of it, and he's a sportsman. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about North Korea. Now, the president tweeted this afternoon, there's only one thing that's going to work with North Korea. And that tells me that, and he's legitimately frustrated. I think we have it up on the screen. The presidents and their administrations have been talking to North Korea for 25 years. Is it time for the president to preemptively go after North Korea?
The president's not there yet. He hasn't said what the red line is. The president, though, is making it absolutely clear that he is serious about the military option. And his range of options, from the unconventional to the conventional, we operate under the DIME principle: diplomacy, information, military economics. The president knows that he has a stronger hand when all options are on the table. And he's letting it be known to Kim Jong-un and for others in that region that he's serious about using it if necessary.
But didn't he actually draw the red line when he said, I am authorizing the military to take down any missile that's headed toward Hawaii, Guam, the United States?
Oh, no doubt. So the president gets criticized because he said his fire and fury comment. But the fact is, if North Korea actually attacked the United States, they would be met with fire and fury.
Of course.
We also have to make sure North Korea doesn't get the capability to deliver a nuclear warhead to the United States.
But we don't know that. They keep doing things that we don't know anything about.
So the timeline is getting so condensed, and the president gets his daily intelligence briefings. He takes them seriously. He has great people around him giving the most up-to-date advice.
Yeah.
And he may be realizing that the multilateral diplomacy, the economic pressure, it might not work in time. So he is going to let it be known to the world. He's going to let it known to Kim Jong-un that he's serious. And Kim Jong-un, they say he's homicidal, not suicidal. And Kim Jong-un needs to know that he is risking his life, not just his power and his regime.
Well, my sense right now is that, it's in our interest to do something preemptively because the guy seems to be out of his mind. But let's talk about Iran and the talk that he's going to decertify. Now, if the president decertifies the Iran deal, which was part of what he ran on when he ran for president, what happens then? That forces you guys in Congress to take action, right?
Absolutely. If the president decertifies, and he should, and he instinctively, he said during the campaign, he knows that this is a bad deal. 70% of Americans knew it was a bad deal. It was a bad deal for what was in the deal. It was a bad deal for what wasn't in the deal. For Iran, all of Iran's bad activities that have been going on, they've been empowered. They've become more of a regional power. They're sponsoring terrorism. They're overthrowing foreign governments. They pledge death to America.
Let me ask you this, but if he decertifies, isn't the only thing that's going to hurt Iran is if we impose the sanctions again? Because that's what brought him to the table, the sanctions,
Absolutely.
The economic. We already gave him $150 billion, whatever that number is,
Right.
unmarked planes, pallets.
And that's the leverage, and you have to put the leverage back on the table. So the president, in decertifying it, he needs to put the onus on Iran. If Iran wants to keep all of that sanctions relief long term, well, these are the terms of what makes.
Well, we can't
for a
take the
better
money
deal.
back from him, can we?
No,
from Iran?
Well, no, but going
Okay.
forward, though, we need to make sure that that leverage is placed, or we're not going to be able to deal with all of Iran's other bad activities.
Does Congress have the fortitude to go along with the president on this?
The votes are there on the House, and the votes are at least almost there in the Senate. But it's important for Senate Republicans, for all of them, to understand that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats, you can't trust that they're going to give any votes. You need to get to 51 votes in the Senate.
Well, where's Mitch McConnell? I don't even, you know what? Mitch McConnell has enough senators, does he not?
Well, he does have enough senators. You have some senators there who, I don't know if it's their ego or what it is. They need to work with this president, not against him.
Yeah, and it's time, because we got to go, but it's time for them to snap out of it if it's their ego. Congressman Lee Zeldin, good to see you tonight.
Good to see you.
Thank you. And RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany is here tonight and standing by live. You don't want to miss her. And next, if you're not already DVRing Justice, make sure to start now. Dan Bongino and Chris Hahn, primed and ready for battle. Now, this is an all-star political panel, and it's right here next. Don't go away. Welcome back to Justice. A ton of topics on deck tonight for my political panel. Let's get right to it. Former Secret Service agent and best-selling author Dan Bongino and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer, syndicated radio host Chris Hahn. All right, guys, I'm going to give you a little bit of time to talk about whether or not a bump stock makes a darn bit of difference in this gun control debate. Chris, let's hear it.
Hey, look, I want to get rid of bump stocks, but I think we need a plan to really regulate guns. We need insurance on guns, so they're personal responsibility. I'll tell you what. I'll let the NRA sell the insurance so they can decide who should or shouldn't have guns, not the government, and let the states determine how we register those guns. But we need to do something so that we know what guns are out there and who has them, and we have to keep them out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them. And if there was private sector insurance doing it, the private sector would do the check because they don't want to lose money by some nut buying 20,000 rounds of ammunition and bump stocks to shoot up a concert.
Dan?
Yeah, we're all supposed to take advice from Chris, by the way. Thanks, Chris. He talks to us like we're subjects, not citizens. That's typically what liberals do. The guy's a walking talking point. Yeah, the NRA, we're all evil people. We did nothing wrong, Judge.
Ad hominem.
No, Chris, listen, here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
No, let me just finish my point here. You guys really did a bang-up job in Chicago where you run the state monopolistically, the city, I'm sorry, within the state monopolistically, in controlling gun crime over there and in Baltimore. We're all supposed to take your advice on the national level because, again, you're doing such a wonderful job in the places you rule monopolistically in shutting down gun violence. So, yeah.
Dan,
you guys are doing really wonderful work.
You would only live in a city with other progressives, Dan. That's the only place you would live.
Why would I live in a city run by a Democratic mayor? They have the highest rate of crime. Are you kidding me, Chris? How could you sit there and actually say, how can you actually say that these cities, Baltimore, St. Louis, Chicago, these are cities that where we would want to live, where the murder rate is so high, where the only people who have guns are the criminals?
Yeah, Dan, where do you live? That's what I'm saying.
That's not the point. Don't change the subject,
by the way,
Chris. Chris, don't change the subject.
I live in Florida, where the rate of gun violence is very low, by the way.
Have you heard of with a bump stock? Tell me. And why did Obama let that pass through?
Like everybody else in America, I just heard about bump stocks.
And we still don't know, Chris, whether or not a bump stock was used in this case.
If we find out that it was, don't you think we should take them off the streets so that we can't have automatic weapons? We have a ban on automatic weapons in this country.
A lot of good it did. A lot of good semi-automatic ban did with Clinton. But go ahead, Dan.
Well, Judge, let's just be clear on this, okay? Chris represents the party that suckles at Hollywood every day. They fight for the scraps of the table of the money. Hollywood makes them walk around like dogs for donation dollars as they put a bloodbath on screen every single day. His party runs Chicago, where young minority children are being mowed down every single day. As, by the way, his party attacks cops at every opportunity. And again, all of a sudden, we're supposed to take. Now Chris is all fired up about bump stocks.
Yeah.
Where was Chris about Chicago? Where's Chris about Hollywood?
Let's talk about people
Where's Chris about violent video games?
He's nowhere. The NRA owns the Republicans in Congress. They own them. Wayne LaPierre,
really? By the way, have you heard of the Constitution?
52 senators.
Have you heard of the Second Amendment?
What?
Shall not be infringed. What are you talking about? What makes you think that you can make a decision as to whether or not Americans can have guns? You know what? There's a federal appeals court who just said, a federal circuit court just said a couple weeks ago that you don't have to explain a legal reason why you want a concealed carry. What is going on? The Supreme Court is saying you can have a gun. Where do you people go off?
We have to have a real conversation about guns in this country, even if it means revisiting the Second Amendment.
You want to revisit the Second Amendment?
There were 30,000 gun deaths in America this year and 100,000 total injuries and deaths.
How many drunk drivers? Should we sue General Motors so people can't use cars to kill other people? Or should we sue a vodka company? Dan, go.
No, Judge,
Chris, that's enough.
We register and insure gun cars.
Again, Chris is a walking talking point. The NRA owns politicians, right? That's what he said. Right? Well, I didn't miss it. We can rewind the tape.
They own you, too, Dan.
Chris, can you pipe down for a minute? minute I let you talk, okay? The NRA owns politicians. Planned Parenthood gives a multiple of about 10 the times about the money they give to Democrats, and the NRA gives to politicians. And by the way, the NRA has supported some Democrats too in the past.
It's a lie.
No, that is true.
That is true.
And by the way, you made a
don't
fool of
say
after the
everything's a
segment when
lie
somebody
because you don't
fact-checks
agree
it.
with it. Chris, you can't do that.
It's not true. That's complete.
But
it's not true.
Well,
I mean, let's get the data.
Oh, let's get the data.
I have the data. And you know what
later.
the data is? Here, wait. You asked
Tweet
for
it
the
out.
data. Here's the data. Since 1991, there are over 100 million more guns in the United States, and violent crime has gone down. Listen, you're the party of science, right? You guys are all so brilliant. Can you do correlation? The correlation works in the opposite direction. More guns, less
Gun crime
You can do
has
math,
gone
right?
up.
You understand that stuff? Explain that one.
100,000 deaths and injuries from guns last
More
year
guns,
in America. That's
less
too
crime.
many. We
Did
have
you hear
a
what I
right
said?
to life in this country.
Right to life
to
from
carry
a
a gun.
Democrat, no less. Did you realize what you just
Life,
said?
liberty, and property,
I'm going to
baby.
tell Chuck Schumer you just talked about right to life for Americans. Here's the bottom line. Is Congress going to start looking into the HIPAA records and the medical health records of individuals as opposed to taking guns from law-abiding citizens? Chris?
Look, I don't think that Congress or the government should determine who gets a gun, Judge. That's not what I said. I said the private sector should have some sort of insurance industry created to determine who should have guns
okay,
and how
that's
much
enough. Dan,
liability
10
they should
seconds.
carry.
Insurance, 10 seconds.
Yeah, because that's a good idea, Chris. Because criminals are absolutely going to go buy insurance. It's a great idea. Yeah, criminals are the first ones in line for gun insurance.
They're going to get insurance. And by the way, we got to go. We got to go. And here's the problem with insurance. Then you have a national registry, don't you? Which is just what you want.
Yes.
Dan
Thank
Bongino,
God.
Chris
We
Hahn,
need it.
thanks so much. And back in a moment.
If we could make a deal, at least on a temporary basis, because Obamacare is exploding. It's gone. The premiums are through the roof. You see what's happening. So if we could make a temporary deal, because ultimately we're going to have it back to the states. We're going to block grant back to the states. But if we made a temporary deal, I think it would be a great thing for people. But it's really up to them. Obamacare is a disaster. The numbers are out. It's exploding like I said it would.
That's President Trump today sounding like he may be willing to cut a short-term deal on Obamacare. Question. Will that be a deal with the Dems because the GOP establishment has failed him yet again? Joining me now with a reaction, RNC spokesperson Kayleigh McEnany. All right, good evening, Kayleigh. You know, it's very interesting because what the president said is, look, I called Chuck Schumer. I want to do a great health care bill. He tweets that, and then Schumer comes out and says, I told Trump repeal and replace is off the table, which isn't the first time he said it. Where are we, and what does the RNC think?
Well, President Trump hasn't given up on Obamacare repeal and replace. That's what's exciting to us. He is pushing this forward. And look, we're not used to a president who doesn't engage in partisan politics. It's refreshing to see a president who says, I see the pain of the American people. I see $3,000 average premium increases, 2.6 million Americans with one exchange option next year. The pain of the people comes first, not partisan politics.
All right. So do you think that even though Schumer says no repeal and replace, it seems like there's a middle ground where possibly they're interested in, modifying it somewhat so there's never really a repeal and replace where the president is just trying to give some kind of relief to the American people?
He wants to give relief, but look, there has to be repeal and replace. And Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi need to wise up and realize that they have bought into a failing system. Obamacare is failing on every single level.
But they don't care.
Systematically. They don't care.
They tell us everything is fine.
They don't care about Americans across the country.
What do you say to Mitch McConnell?
What I say to Mitch McConnell is get the party in line behind the president of the United States.
And if he can't, what should happen to Mitch McConnell?
Look, the Republicans in Congress will decide that, but one person won a national election. That's President Trump and no one else. So he is the leader of this party, and everyone needs to stand behind him. Mitch McConnell and everyone.
I'll tell you, everyday Americans are frustrated with Republicans, the rhinos. But I want to move now about is something that personally infuriates me, and that is the issue of California, as if, they are setting the tone, is now a sanctuary state. And as part of that, there is a suggestion or a requirement that bars police from asking an immigration status and bars police from participating in immigration roundups. What is that about?
Yeah, this is a slap in the face to every American who has been victimized by illegal immigrant crime. I was just texting with someone who you met at the Las Vegas debate. Her name's Sabine Durden. She lost her son in California. And she told me that she was heartbroken today when she found out about this California sanctuary state bill because her son Dominic died at the hand of an illegal immigrant. Slap in the face to Sabine Durden and Americans out there who have lost their lives.
Yes, but what happens since it is a sanctuary state now, and Jeff Sessions is saying, I'm not going to give you, we'll see if he actually follows up, we're not going to give you that grant money unless you comply with the requirements, and we're not asking you to do anything other than alert us, and if we present you with a detainer, you have to do this.
You have to do this. I mean, this is an absolute unconstitutional piece of legislation that I fully expect to be challenged. We know federal government is in charge of immigration
law. But isn't California in the Ninth Circuit? I don't have a lot of faith there. Isn't that the Ninth Circus?
But perhaps we can have faith in the Supreme Court, which oftentimes strikes down the Ninth Circuit.
All right, Kelly McEnany, great to have you on. Look forward to having you back.
Judge.
Thank you. And we'll be back in a moment with Charlie Kirk. Hang on. President Trump is trying to make America great again. But how can he move his agenda forward when the deep state is there at every step? Tonight, I want to spotlight two of Washington's worst. But first, let me bring in my guest, founder and director of the Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk. All right, Charlie, the president has indicated that his next legislative agenda is for tax reform. And, when I thought about that, I went back to the fact that Jeff Sessions on a Friday last month says, you know what, we're not going to prosecute Lois Lerner, which then brings me to the swamp. And in this swamp, the person who shockingly is still the director of the Internal Revenue Service, the commissioner, is John Koskinen. How is it that this guy is still the head of the IRS? What is he doing there? Wasn't he impeached?
Yeah, he was by the House. He was put up for impeachment, and Jason Chaffetz, when he was in charge of House oversight, he even said that Koskinen testified, quote, untruthfully. I mean, this is a guy that was deep into the cover-up of Lois Lerner's criminal activities. And you remember what happened, and this was not reported by the mainstream media. The IRS was used as a political machine by the Obama administration to go after conservative nonprofits and not give them nonprofit status, but also enact audits for people they disagree with. And he was instrumental in that cover-up when Congress tried to pursue the truth. Remember what those 24,000 emails just disappeared. He testified in front of Congress and he said, sorry, those emails are gone forever. I mean, come on, no one actually believed him. Even Paul Ryan said we didn't believe him.
Yeah, I know. Paul Ryan said he didn't believe him. But you know what's amazing to me? He was so smug. And he said, we've lost those emails. We've lost them forever. And I'm thinking to myself, I could get a forensic accountant and find this stuff. And then he comes back and says, oh, we found them. But wait a minute, you swore under oath that you lost them. All of the emails, and what are we talking about? We're talking about emails of Lois Lerner. We're talking about all of this, all of this Obama administration attempt to punish Republicans. And this guy is still getting a check. I mean, the president has an agenda, and yet at the same time, this guy is still collecting a check from taxpayers. Why?
Unacceptable, and Secretary Mnuchin has the power to remove him, and he should. This guy is an Obama holdover that does not hold the agenda that the president's trying to get forth to make America great again. It's really important with tax reform. It's not just, remember, tax cuts, but they want to redo the tax rates and deductions, and with that is nonprofit status, something that I know very well, and you're going to keep the same guy that was involved in the cover-up under Lois Lerner? Yeah. It's completely unacceptable. He's got to go.
It shocks me. All right, let's go to the second person from what I think is the Washington wasteland, and that's Andrew McCabe, who was acting director of the FBI when Jim Comey was fired, and now is deputy director. Now, his mess in terms of the deep state is that he took money from McAuliffe, who was the governor in Virginia, for his wife, something like $600,000, and at the same time that he was investigating the Hillary Clinton email scandal, and
Correct.
his wife is running on the same ticket with Hillary Clinton.
That's exactly right. And the president's instincts on this were correct over the summer when he challenged Sessions. He said, why is this guy still around? And this guy got a ton of money through a political slush fund through the Clintons' best friend, Terry McAuliffe. He was actually in charge of the Hillary Clinton email investigation in the FBI when that contribution came over. It's completely unacceptable. Not to mention, he's under investigation for violation of the Hatch Act. That story got broke, in early August, and no one's talking about it. Why is this guy still around? He definitely does not see eye to eye with the president to make America great again, as you always talk about. And look, those are two people, Koskinen and McCabe, that I think the president's instincts are get rid of these people, and that's exactly what should happen to both of them.
Well, you know what? We're going to keep digging, and we're going to find out why. Charlie Kirk, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll be right back. Reading all your posts and comments on my social media. So remember, friend me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Judge_Jeanine. Remember, tell your friends and your family to watch. And if you're too busy, don't forget to set your DVR. Thanks so much for watching. That's it for us tonight. Greg Gutfeld is next. See you next week. We're going to continue to dig deep and find deep state actors who make up Washington's worst.